This is PrepTest 157, Section 1, Passage 4. It's about international debt and whether it damages a nation's environment and quality of life. The difficulty level for this one, I would say, is medium, and it's got a pretty simple structure, but there's a difficult trap hidden inside it. Now, this is a social science passage. Someone makes a case, the author takes it apart. But here is what makes it tricky. The author doesn't actually land on the other side. Students will read the pushback and assume the author is saying the environmentalists are wrong. But that's not what happens. The author's real position is softer than it looks, and that softness is where the test writers are going to get you. Now, the main point here is that environmentalists claim international debt hurts quality of life, but the evidence is too weak to know whether that's true. Now, the most important stretch of this passage starts at when they say the evidence for their claims is weak. Everything after that sentence is where the hardest questions come from, so we're going to break it down now. The first chunk lays out the environmentalist's argument. Two reasons. First is the exports promotion hypothesis. A country in debt has to sell more stuff abroad, so it shifts resources toward export goods. More production, more damage. The classic example here is raising forests for timber or to clear land for cash crops. The second reason is that debt forces a nation to cut domestic spending on healthcare, education, water quality, environmental subsidies. All of them are on the chopping block. You want to read this whole section at a steady pace. Don't slow down on here because you got to understand the argument, but none of this is the author talking. This is all just setup. The author is giving the environmentalists a clean runway before pulling out the rug. Then you've got the pivot, that the evidence for the claims is weak. That one sentence changes everything you want to slow way down from here. The author goes after the exports promotion hypothesis first. One study did find a link between debt and deforestation, but it also showed other factors might matter more. A second study found barely any link. And in one country, the correlation actually ran backward. Then the author drops this. Nobody has even studied whether debt affects pollution or other kinds of resource depletion. So the data is thin, it's mixed, and it's incomplete. That's three problems, not one. And then the author hits the domestic spending argument. And this is the move you gotta catch. The environmentalists assume that when a debt-heavy nation cuts spending, the cuts always make things worse. The author says that's a coin flip. Maybe they cut healthcare, but maybe they scrap the plans to build dams. Maybe they drop subsidies for pesticides. The cuts could help the environment just as easily as they could hurt it. You don't know which way they're going to go. And neither do the environmentalists. That is the author's whole point. You want to watch for the word unknown near the end because that word is carrying the entire conclusion. The author doesn't land on saying debt is fine. The author lands on saying we can't tell. And then, right at the very end, the author floats one more idea. Maybe some of the fiscal discipline that debt forces on a country actually stops harmful spending. But even that gets hedged. They say a case could be made, not saying this is true, just this is possible. Now here's the key move. The author's conclusion is deliberate uncertainty. The connection between debt and quality of life is a big unknown, and every hard question on this passage will test whether you respected that word or replaced it with something stronger. Now here's the trap. You read 3 paragraphs of pushback, so your brain files the author as being disagrees with the environmentalists. But that is too clean because the author doesn't reject their claim. The author just says the evidence can't support it yet. So if you see an answer choice that says the author refutes or disproves or demonstrates the flaws in the environmentalist position, that's the wrong answer because the right answer is going to use softer language like questions or casts doubt or finds insufficient. In other words, you want to look for the hedge here. Now, before you hit the questions, you want to lock in on 3 things. First, what did the 2 studies on deforestation actually find, and why does that matter? Second, what is the author's counterpoint on domestic spending? Not just that it exists, but how it works. And then third, and this is what separates a 160 score from a 170 score on this passage, does the author believe the environmentalists are wrong, or does the author believe we don't have enough information to know? Those are 2 very different positions. The author of the passage, of course, picks the second one, and you want to make sure that you do as well.